Once upon a time, long, long ago, when people lived in caves, that was before they'd invented anything, the other animals used to look at those people and feel sorry for them. The other animals would talk about how unfortunate these creatures, these people were. They wondered how these people would survive and how they would live. Those cave people appeared naked with no special covering and no tools in their bodies. They were not strong like elephants. They definitely weren't fast like cheetahs. And they certainly couldn't fly like the birds. They couldn't even swim like the fish. In fact, they didn't look like they would last very long at all. The sheep would talk about how lucky that they were that they had a thick coat of wool to keep them warm in the winter. The echidnas would talk about how lucky that they were that they had their spikes to stop others from trying to eat them. The tigers would talk about how lucky they were that they had special teeth and claws to help them catch and eat their prey. All of the other animals talked about how lucky they were that they had special tools in their bodies to help them, to help defend themselves, to help them to escape, and to help them to survive. They thought what poor, puny, defenseless creatures these people were, with no special covering, no special tools, and nothing to help them survive. The other animals also pitied the cave people because they didn't have a special place to live. The cows would talk about how easy their lives were. All they had to do was eat grass. They would say, "We belong where there's grass, and so long as there's grass, we have a home." The frogs would talk about how easy their lives were. They just had to sit by the pond and wait for an insect to fly by, and zap, that was dinner. They would say, "We belong by the pond where it's easy to get a meal. The water keeps our skin moist, and it's a good place for a swim." The camels would say how wonderful their lives were because they could survive for such a long time without water, where many other animals would die of thirst. So they said, "Well, we belong in the desert." The polar bears laughed because they were happy living where it was so cold and many other animals couldn't live. They had a special white coat to keep them warm, and they said, "We belong in the Arctic." The people, though, they had no home. They had to keep moving from place to place to find shelter, and to hunt, and to gather any food that they could find. All the animals wondered how long these poor people with no special tools in their bodies and no home would survive. It seemed to all the other animals that these people just didn't belong anywhere. The other animals also felt sorry for these early people because their babies were so helpless. The horse said, "When my babies are born, they can stand almost straight away, and before long they can feed themselves." The turtle said, "How lucky we are that when our babies hatch out of their eggs, they already know how to swim." The other animals thought how unlucky these people were that both the mother and father needed to spend so much time taking care of their babies. Most of the other animals' babies grew up very quickly, and the animal parents didn't need to do too much to help their children to grow up, but for the people, it took their children about 20 years to become grown-up adults. The human parents needed to provide a great deal of care to help their children grow up. They had to protect them, to feed them, they had to clean them, play with them, and teach their children how to survive. Some of the other animals also did this, but they didn't need to do it for nearly as long as the people. And so it seemed to the animals that they had the clear advantage that each one had been given a special guide, almost like a job to do, as to where they should live, what food they should eat, how they should behave, and what movements they should make. The people, however, they didn't seem to belong anywhere, and they had no special job to do. The other animals used to think that these people were in an awfully hopeless situation, with no tools, no home, and such dependent babies. Somehow, though, these early people survived. They were not in such a hopeless situation after all. They had some help. They had a special brain that made them extremely curious creatures. They were so curious that they explored everything. They watched, they looked, and they listened. They observed the world around them. With their special brain, that seemed to work by itself, they were always asking questions about the world around them. What's that? Why does that happen? How does that work? Does that taste good? They asked many more questions like this. It was like almost every question they answered led to another question. Now this special brain also had the power to imagine. That is to see things with your mind's eye. With their imagination, these early people were able to borrow ideas from things they'd seen around them. Sometimes they'd have several ideas and put them together to create something new. Some of these early people had been watching some of the animals with their sharp horns and tusks. They thought to themselves how useful it would be to have their own horns. One person broke a branch off a tree, snapped the twigs off, and sharpened it up. They thought that they could use the sharpened branch like the horns to hunt with. Even though they had the idea to make their own hunting tool, they still had to work, and that is why they had to try their idea out, because they didn't know if their idea would work. Soon, they found that it was very dangerous to get close to the animals. They had to adjust their plan and try something else. They learned to throw their sharpened branch, and so they invented the spear. They found it safer throwing the spear, but when they first did it, they weren't very accurate, which meant that they often missed the animals when they were hunting. So they needed to practice throwing the spear. They needed to repeat, and to repeat, and to repeat, and to repeat again and again and again what they wanted to do, so that when they needed to do it, when they absolutely had to throw the spear, they could do it accurately and without thinking about it. It's like many things. You might know what you're meant to do, but until you've practiced it over and over and over again, it's not always easy. You might be able to think of some things like this. Eventually, after they'd practiced enough that they became very accurate, they could hunt well, but then they found something else out. The animals had learned that the people were good hunters, and they would try to get away if they knew the people were trying to hunt them. So the people needed to be patient and have great self-control so that they could sneak up on their prey. They realized that if they made a sound, the animal would escape and they wouldn't have anything to eat. So these early people learned that they needed to master themselves. They needed self-control so they could seize the opportunity when it arose and throw the spear at just the right moment. They had to get their timing right, otherwise the animal they were hunting would escape and they'd go hungry. Over time, these early people used their special brain to observe, to imagine, to try, to adjust, to practice, and to master themselves. This was not just for hunting, but for building, farming, cooking, making eggs, making clothes, and just about everything else that they did. Now remember, the other animals used to feel sorry for the people because their babies took so long to grow up. Well, this turned out to be a good thing. Because the babies took a long time to grow up, the children had a long time to learn from their parents and from the other people around them. Sometimes, the children just observed what the adults were doing and learnt by trying things out for themselves. While at other times, parents and other adults explained, and they demonstrated things, and then the children imitated or copied and repeated what they were doing until they too could do it easily. Although the people didn't have special tools in their bodies like the other animals, the people learned many things. They learned to make their own clothes, their own tools, and their homes. And and all sorts of other ingenious things. The people could also choose what kind of life they wanted to live. The sheep have to eat grass to survive. They couldn't survive on the ice with a polar bear, and the polar bear couldn't survive in the desert with a camel. Fortunately though, people could learn to live wherever they liked, whether it was hot or cold, wet or dry. They could eat all sorts of plants and animals that they found. As time passed, people learned more and more. Some began to specialize like the animals. That is, if a person was good at something, he or she would spend most of his or her time doing that activity. Some people were good at hunting, so they spent most of their time hunting. Some were good at cooking, so they spent most of their time cooking. Some were good at building, so they spent most of their time building. Whatever activity people chose to do them, they needed to observe, to try, to practice, and how to master themselves. And all the while, these curious creatures, these exploring apes, kept asking why and how, and making adjustments to improve things as they went along their journey through life.
There's a lot to learn in the world. People are still finding out more and more today. And as clever as we are, we're not perfect. We, like the other animals, also have the ability to make mistakes. Sometimes our mistakes are small and insignificant, and we can laugh about them, whilst sometimes our mistakes are large and tragic. Mistakes, as painful or as humorous as they may be, remind us that something's not quite right, that we've got to change something, to make an adjustment next time to avoid a regrettable or embarrassing situation. Some mistakes may be easy to fix, some difficult, and some not possible to rectify at all. But even those mistakes that we can't fix, we can learn from, so as not to repeat them. And as frustrating as mistakes can be, they're not all bad. Sometimes they lead to accidental discoveries and exciting new opportunities to explore. It's taken a wee while, but these exploring, imitating and innovating apes have come a long way from the hopeless creatures that they first appeared to be. We humans have built up a civilization that is jam-packed with brilliant inventions and discoveries. We're not finished yet though, far from it. We've got a lot to fix and make amends for, and every day more opportunities appear. And now for the really exciting part. You are part of the story. It's your turn to explore the world around you. Bon voyage and happy exploring.